What would our world look like without cats? What would it become? And what happens if you suddenly swallow gum? Are there nights when questions like these keep you awake, tossing and turning, trying to figure out the answers? Today, I'll try to reveal the answers to all these mysteries. But if any of your questions remain unanswered, don't hesitate to leave them in the comments. I'll be happy to answer them next time. For now, let's start with the first question. What happens if you drink too much water at once? When looking for the answer to this question, you might be surprised, but water poisoning is real, and it can be quite dangerous. Our kidneys can only process about 1 liter of water per hour. If you exceed that limit, your body can suffer from a serious imbalance of water and electrolytes. Water starts to build up in your body, leading to swelling, and in the most severe cases, even brain edema. This is a clear example of how even something as good for you as water needs to be consumed in moderation. Moderation is the key to health in every aspect of life. Number 2. What really happens if you swallow gum? You probably remember your mom warning you that if you swallow gum, it'll stay in your stomach for 7 years. But that's just a common myth, and the truth is far less dramatic. Gum doesn't get stuck in your body for that long. Yes, its components, like natural or synthetic polymers and butyl rubber, can't be digested by saliva or stomach acid, but your body doesn't just leave it in your stomach. The muscles of your digestive system keep things moving, and gum passes through your intestines and leaves your body naturally, just like anything else you can't digest. Now here's a question: is it possible to blow bubbles with gum from another part of the body? If you've ever had such an experience or just have a funny comment about it, write it below. Now let's move on. Number 3. What happens if you step on a rusty nail? First off, you're likely to feel unbearable pain and scream as you try to deal with the sharp discomfort. But what happens next? You may have heard that wounds from rusty objects can lead to tetanus. Well, the culprit behind this unpleasant condition is a specific bacterium known as Clostridium tetani, or the tetanus bacillus. These bacteria live in soil, dirt, and animal feces, which makes sense, since rusty objects are often found in places like that, thankfully, not always alongside feces. When this bacterium enters the body through an open wound, it starts producing a toxin that affects the nervous system. This can lead to severe muscle spasms, difficulty swallowing, and even seizures. But don't panic, there's a special antitoxin that fights tetanus effectively and helps prevent serious consequences. So, if you've been injured this way, the best thing to do is see a doctor and get a shot. Number 4. What if Earth's gravity disappeared? If you imagine gravity suddenly disappearing, everything not attached to the ground would start flying off the planet. People, animals, cars, all of it would shoot into space, since nothing would be holding us down. Trees and buildings, unlike us, might stay put, their roots and foundations go deep into the ground, and maybe you'd be able to grab onto them for a moment. But that would only be temporary. Without gravity, Earth couldn't stay whole. Soon, it would begin to fall apart, breaking into pieces and vanishing into the vast emptiness of space. Eventually, the whole planet would disintegrate, and its remains would float away into the void. Gravity is what holds our planet together and keeps it stable, and without it, Earth is doomed. Yeah, that probably wouldn't be the best day for humanity. Number 5. What if all the cats disappeared? It might seem like our fluffy, lazy house cats only play a small role in our lives. But in reality, their impact on the global ecosystem is way more important than we think. If all the cats disappeared, the world would start to change, fast. One of the first consequences would be a massive increase in the rodent population. Mice and rats, suddenly free of their natural predators, would start reproducing like crazy. This would lead to the spread of dangerous diseases like the plague and leptospirosis, which can be transmitted from animals to humans. Rodents would also begin destroying bird populations, especially those that nest on the ground, and they'd eat up all the stored grain we've carefully collected. Even though we think we're feeding the cats, the truth is, without them, our food security could actually be at risk. Cats are natural population controllers for rodents, helping to prevent them from multiplying uncontrollably. So even though we often see our pets as spoiled and lazy, their disappearance would create real chaos in nature and everyday life. Maybe it's time to thank your fluffy friend for their quiet but incredibly important job. But please don't tell them that, their ego is already big enough. Number 6. What would happen if all the oxygen on Earth disappeared for just 5 seconds? Try holding your breath and imagining what would happen in that moment. Oxygen isn't just crucial for breathing, it's a key element that supports many vital processes on our planet. First, our skin would immediately start suffering from ultraviolet radiation. Oxygen protects us from the sun's rays by forming a natural barrier against their harmful effects. Without that shield, we could get serious burns in just a few seconds. But that's not all. The oceans, which are made up of 1/3 oxygen, would start to evaporate. Imagine how everyday life on Earth would change if the oceans and seas just disappeared. This would not only be a disaster for ecosystems, but for the climate, which would begin to change rapidly. Next, concrete buildings, which we're used to thinking of as indestructible, would begin to crumble. The reason is that oxygen plays a key role in the hardening process of concrete by binding its elements. Without this binding agent, structures would start to weaken and fall apart right before our eyes. The sky, which we're used to seeing as blue, would turn black, even in the middle of the day. The reason is simple: oxygen and other particles in the atmosphere scatter light, giving the sky its familiar color. Without oxygen, that scattering wouldn't happen, and light wouldn't be able to penetrate the atmosphere, leaving a dark void. All this happens in just a few seconds without oxygen, and the consequences of those moments could be devastating for all life on the planet. A terrifying thought, isn't it? Number 7. What if the internet shut down for a whole day? Picture it: no cat memes, no news, no social media. For some of us, that would be a full-blown disaster. But if you look at the situation from another angle, a one-day internet blackout could have much more serious consequences. First and foremost, the financial sector would be hit hard. All banks and financial institutions that rely on internet services to process transactions would come to a standstill. Credit cards and online banking would stop working because servers wouldn't be able to verify your data. For you, that might mean not being able to withdraw cash or pay for goods or services. Don't forget about the stock markets, either. Exchanges that operate around the clock using the internet for data and trading would be completely paralyzed. This could cause serious economic consequences, with no one able to make trades or check current prices. In addition, everyday things like traffic lights, which help manage traffic flow in cities, could also go down. Many parts of urban infrastructure depend on the internet to work properly, including those same traffic lights, which sync with central computers that receive information via the internet. If they stop working, we could see chaos on the streets. Yes, a one-day internet outage could cause major inconveniences. Now imagine how difficult it would be to live without the internet in everyday life. Could you go a whole day without social media, search engines, or online shopping? Share your thoughts in the comments. Number 8. What happens if you don't wash your hair for a whole year? The first consequences would show up pretty quickly. Your hair would turn into something awful, greasy, sticky, and with a strong smell that would make you want to hide. Without regular washing, your scalp isn't protected from the buildup of dirt, dust, and pollutants from the environment, like soot, which would only make things worse. But that's not all. Neglecting your hair care creates the perfect environment for scalp inflammation. Without washing, your skin becomes a breeding ground for bacteria and fungi, which leads to dandruff. As a result, instead of clean, well-groomed hair, you'd have constant itching and discomfort. This can turn into chronic scalp problems, with irritation, redness, and even the worsening of seborrhea, a condition that's difficult to treat without proper hygiene. So if you thought going a year without shampoo was a bold experiment, maybe it's time to reconsider. Looks like shampoo isn't such a bad thing after all, huh? Number 9. What happens if you eat 50 eggs at once? You probably remember that famous scene from Cool Hand Luke, where Paul Newman effortlessly downs a whole pile of eggs. So if you ever feel like trying to recreate that scene, get ready for some unpleasant consequences. First off, 50 eggs contain about 3,800 calories. For most people, that's an enormous amount of food, way more than your body can digest quickly. Eggs are full of protein, fat, and carbs in concentrated form, and they take time to break down. That means for hours afterward, you'll feel heavy, and probably uncomfortably full. Also, don't forget what that many eggs can do to your digestion. In such quantities, eggs can cause intense bloating, massive gas, which would make you feel seriously uncomfortable. In short, I wouldn't recommend trying this experiment. Trust me, your stomach and intestines won't thank you for it. Number 10. What would happen if the Earth started rotating twice as fast on its axis? At first glance, it might seem like just a small change, but the consequences would be astonishing and completely unexpected. The most obvious effect, a full day would be shortened to 12 hours, since each rotation of our planet would take half the time. Think about how much harder it would be to organize your day, especially considering that even 24 hours sometimes isn't enough to get everything done. But that's just the beginning. With the Earth spinning faster, its shape would start to change. Due to the increased centrifugal force caused by faster rotation, water in the oceans would begin to slide toward the equator, raising sea levels by as much as 100 meters. This would flood large coastal areas, for example, Indonesia and a large part of South America would end up underwater. Africa, in turn, would split into two massive islands, as water would surround it on both sides. The increased centrifugal force would also cause constant high humidity, and Earth's atmosphere would become more saturated, covering the planet in thick fog. Hurricanes would not only become much more frequent but also incredibly destructive. The power of these storms would increase dramatically, making them unimaginably dangerous. This future looks a lot more hostile than it may seem at first. It's unlikely anyone would want to live through such global changes, right? Number 11. What would happen if every person on Earth jumped at the same time? Imagine 7 billion people, with a total weight of about 360 billion kilograms. That's a huge mass, and it raises the question, what effect would that have on our planet if we all jumped in sync? Scientifically speaking, the answer is pretty simple. When we jump, we push off the ground, but then we come right back down, and all the force we applied gets cancelled out when we land. This means there would be no long-term effect on Earth. So, even with our huge numbers and total weight, the planet wouldn't experience any noticeable impact. However, we can assume that at the moment of the jump, it would sound incredibly loud. Just imagine the rumble as billions of people hit the ground at once. But overall, the consequences would be practically non-existent. Number 12. What would happen if the moon disappeared? Without the moon, which has a stabilizing effect on Earth, our planet would begin to rotate much faster. This would affect two main things. First, the length of a day would be drastically reduced. If the moon were gone, a full day on Earth would last only 8 hours. That means we'd have around 1,000 days in a single year. This faster rotation would throw off our internal body clocks, and the number of days in a year would basically double. Second, Earth's climate would change significantly. Without the moon, temperatures on the planet would swing between extreme highs and lows. Our climate would become much harsher, with very hot and very cold periods. But probably the most obvious and noticeable change would be the disappearance of tides. The moon is responsible for this phenomenon through its gravitational pull, and without it, the oceans would stop rising and falling. On top of that, losing the moon would cause a small shift in Earth's core. This would increase seismic activity, more frequent earthquakes and volcanic eruptions. So overall, the planet would become much more unstable and vulnerable to natural disasters. Luckily, the moon is still keeping our planet in check, and these disasters remain only a theory. But just imagine what Earth would be like without it. Which of these facts surprised you the most? Share your thoughts in the comments, we'd love to hear what you think. If you enjoyed the video, don't forget to hit the like button and share it with your friends. Subscribe to our channel so you don't miss new amazing and educational videos. Join us and stay up to date with the most fascinating facts.